March 24, 1945. 06:30 hours, the Rhine River near Oppenheim, Germany. Morning mist clung to the dark waters as Oberst Heinrich Müller of the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division raised his field glasses, scanning the opposite bank for any sign of American movement. The Wehrmacht had spent months fortifying every bridge crossing, every ferry point, every conceivable location where Allied forces might attempt to breach Hitler's last natural barrier. What Miller couldn't know was that American engineers had already solved the river crossing problem in ways that German military doctrine had never contemplated. The Americans had just launched Operation Plunder with capabilities that would render traditional defensive thinking obsolete. The German army had encountered the Ford GPA amphibious jeep, a vehicle that could drive directly into rivers and emerge on the opposite bank as if water were merely another type of terrain. The strategic situation in March 1945 presented the Wehrmacht with what appeared to be manageable defensive mathematics. German commanders had calculated that crossing the Rhine would require the Americans to concentrate massive forces at predictable points, allowing for effective defensive responses. Every major bridge had been destroyed, ferry crossings were heavily fortified, and the spring floods had swollen the river to its most formidable dimensions. German intelligence estimated that any Allied crossing would require extensive preparation, massive pontoon bridge construction, and vulnerable concentration of forces that could be targeted by artillery and the remaining Luftwaffe assets. The Wehrmacht had fought a defensive war for nearly 2 years, and their officers understood the tactical advantages that river barriers provided to defending forces. Previous Allied river crossings had followed predictable patterns that reinforced German confidence in their defensive preparations. The Seine crossing in August 1944 had required days of preparation and massive engineering efforts. The crossing of the Moselle had involved extensive pontoon bridge construction that German artillery had repeatedly targeted. Each river barrier had slowed Allied advance and provided Wehrmacht units with opportunities to reorganize and establish new defensive lines. German military doctrine emphasized the defensive value of water obstacles, and the Rhine represented the ultimate application of these principles. The river was wider, deeper, and more formidable than any previous barrier the Allies had encountered. The stakes involved in the Rhine crossing could not have been higher for either side. For the Germans, the river represented the last natural barrier protecting the industrial heartland of the Reich. Beyond the Rhine lay the Ruhr Valley, containing the factories and resources that sustained what remained of German war production. Wehrmacht commanders understood that failure to hold the Rhine would mean the rapid collapse of organized resistance in Western Germany. For the Americans, crossing the Rhine meant breaking the back of German resistance and opening the path to final victory in Europe. The crossing had to succeed not just tactically, but with sufficient speed and surprise to prevent German forces from establishing new defensive lines in the German interior. The development of American amphibious capabilities had begun long before the Rhine crossing became a strategic necessity. The Ford Motor Company had received contracts in 1941 to develop an amphibious version of the standard military Jeep, designated the Ford GPA. The vehicle represented a revolutionary approach to military mobility, combining the off-road capabilities of the standard Jeep with the ability to operate as a small boat. Ford's River Rouge plant in Michigan had been modified specifically to produce these amphibious vehicles, with specialized assembly lines that could integrate both automotive and marine engineering requirements. The production process required precision manufacturing that maintained watertight integrity while preserving the mechanical reliability that made American Jeeps legendary. American industrial capacity had produced 12,078 Ford GPA amphibious Jeeps between 1942 and 1943 a production run that demonstrated the scale of American manufacturing capability. Each vehicle required specialized components, including marine propellers, bilge pumps, and waterproofing systems that had to be manufactured to exacting standards. The Willys Overland Company simultaneously developed their own amphibious variant, the Willys MB amphibious conversion, though Ford's GPA became the primary production model. American factories had solved manufacturing challenges that German industry, struggling with raw material shortages and bombing damage, could never have attempted. The amphibious Jeep represented not just tactical innovation, but industrial supremacy that could mass-produce complex, specialized vehicles while maintaining quality standards. The technical specifications of the Ford GPA revealed engineering capabilities that German observers found difficult to comprehend. The vehicle weighed 3,565 pounds and could carry a 1,000-pound payload both on land and in water. Its marine propeller could push the vehicle through water at speeds up to 5.5 knots, while maintaining full automotive performance on land with a top speed of 50 miles per hour. The waterproofing system included specialized seals, drainage systems, and flotation characteristics that allowed the vehicle to operate safely in river conditions that would swamp conventional boats. German technical personnel who examined captured amphibious Jeeps reported that the manufacturing quality and engineering integration exceeded anything in German production, even before wartime shortages had degraded German industrial capabilities. The training requirements for operating amphibious Jeeps had been integrated into American military preparation with characteristic thoroughness. American drivers received specialized instruction in marine operations, including water entry techniques, navigation in current, and emergency procedures for mechanical failure while afloat. Training facilities in the United States included purpose-built water courses that simulated European river conditions, allowing American personnel to develop proficiency before deployment. The logistics system supporting amphibious operations included specialized maintenance procedures, waterproof spare parts storage, and recovery techniques for vehicles that experienced mechanical difficulties while operating in water. German forces had no equivalent training programs or logistical support systems for amphibious vehicle operations. The operational reality of amphibious Jeep employment revealed tactical advantages that transformed river crossing operations from major engineering projects into routine tactical movements. American units could approach river barriers and cross immediately without preparation time, pontoon bridge construction, or concentration of forces that revealed their intentions to German defenders. Small unit operations could be conducted across water obstacles that German doctrine considered impassable without major engineering support. The psychological impact on German defenders was immediate and profound, as vehicles that appeared to be standard American Jeeps would drive directly into rivers and emerge on the German side of the barrier as if the water obstacle did not exist. German attempts to counter amphibious vehicle operations revealed the limitations of Wehrmacht tactical doctrine and available resources. German forces had trained extensively in defending river crossings against conventional engineering operations, but had no experience or doctrine for countering vehicles that could cross rivers independently. Artillery targeting procedures assumed that crossing operations would involve predictable concentration points and extended exposure times that allowed for effective fire missions. The speed and dispersed nature of amphibious vehicle crossings made traditional defensive responses ineffective. German commanders found themselves defending against crossing operations that occurred simultaneously at multiple points along extensive river frontages, overwhelming their ability to concentrate defensive fires. Staff Sergeant Robert Mitchell of the 3rd Armored Division recorded his experience with the Ford GPA during the Rhine crossing operations in his personal diary. March 24th. Drove the amphibious Jeep straight into the Rhine this morning. Jerry never saw it coming. The vehicle handled the current better than I expected, and we were across and setting up our radio position before the Germans realized what had happened. The look on that German prisoner's face when he saw our Jeep tracks leading out of the water was worth the whole war. He kept asking how we got a Jeep acrossing the river without a bridge. Mitchell's account captured the tactical surprise that amphibious vehicles provided and the psychological impact on German personnel who could not comprehend how American vehicles had crossed water barriers. Technical Sergeant James Harrison, serving with the 9th Infantry Division, wrote to his wife about amphibious operations near Remagen. The new amphibious Jeeps are like something out of a science fiction story. Yesterday, we loaded up with radio equipment and drove straight into the Rhine. The Germans on the other side were shooting at what they thought was a boat, but it was just our Jeep with a propeller. When we drove up onto their side of the river, they stopped shooting and just stared. I don't think they believed what they were seeing. One German officer we captured kept examining our Jeep and shaking his head. He said they had nothing like it in the German army. Lieutenant Colonel William Foster, commanding the 23rd Armored Engineer Battalion, provided detailed technical assessments of amphibious vehicle performance in his after-action reports. The Ford GPA has revolutionized our approach to water obstacles. Previous crossing operations required hours of preparation and massive engineering support. With amphibious Jeeps, we can conduct reconnaissance across rivers, establish communications, and begin tactical operations immediately upon encountering water barriers. The vehicles have performed flawlessly in current conditions that would challenge conventional boats. Maintenance requirements are minimal, and the dual capability means we don't sacrifice automotive performance for marine capability. Captured German documents revealed the extent of Wehrmacht confusion regarding American amphibious capabilities. Oberst Friedrich Weber of the 89th Infantry Division wrote in his situation report dated March 25, 1945, American forces are employing vehicles that appear to be standard Jeeps, but demonstrate the ability to cross rivers without engineering support. Initial reports were dismissed as observation errors, but multiple units have confirmed that American vehicles are driving directly into water and emerging on our side of defensive positions. Our defensive planning did not anticipate this capability, and current doctrine provides no guidance for countering such operations. German Technical Intelligence Officer Major Hans Kruger submitted a detailed analysis of captured amphibious vehicles that demonstrated both admiration and despair. The American amphibious Jeep represents engineering and manufacturing capabilities that we cannot match with current resources. The vehicle maintains full automotive performance while incorporating marine systems that allow independent water crossing operations. The manufacturing quality exceeds our current production standards, and the specialized components would require industrial capacity that we no longer possess. The tactical implications are severe, as our defensive doctrine assumes that water obstacles will channelize enemy movement into predictable crossing points. Wehrmacht communications intercepts revealed the immediate tactical confusion caused by amphibious vehicle operations. A radio transmission from the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division, intercepted by American intelligence, reported American vehicles crossing at multiple points along Sector 7. Repeat, vehicles are crossing without bridge or ferry support. Request immediate artillery support at grid references. Negative, targets have already crossed and dispersed, unable to concentrate defensive fires against crossing operation. The transmission captured the tactical helplessness that German commanders experienced when confronting amphibious operations that occurred too quickly and at too many points for effective defensive response. War correspondent Ernie Pyle witnessed amphibious jeep operations during the Rhine crossing and wrote, "I've seen a lot of American ingenuity during this war, but watching a jeep drive into a river and come out the other side like it was crossing a street still amazes me." The Germans had spent months preparing to defend every bridge and ferry crossing, but they never prepared to defend against vehicles that don't need bridges or ferries. The look of complete bewilderment on German prisoners' faces when they see jeep tracks leading out of the water tells you everything about how completely this capability surprised them. Local German civilians near Oppenheim provided accounts that illustrated the psychological impact of amphibious operations on the broader population. Frau Elisabeth Meller, whose farm overlooked the Rhine, recalled, "We heard engines in the morning, but we couldn't see any boats on the river. Then American vehicles started driving up out of the water onto our side of the river, like they had been driving on a road underwater. The German soldiers who had been defending the riverbank just stood there watching. I don't think any of us believed what we were seeing. How do you drive a truck underwater?" The manufacturing scale that supported American amphibious operations demonstrated industrial capabilities that German forces could not hope to match. Ford's River Rouge plant had dedicated assembly lines producing amphibious jeeps at rates that exceeded total German production of comparable specialized vehicles. The plant employed 3,200 workers specifically on amphibious vehicle production, working 3 shifts to maintain continuous output. Quality control procedures included water testing of every vehicle before shipment, ensuring that each amphibious jeep met marine performance standards as well as automotive specifications. The production process consumed specialized materials including marine-grade aluminum, waterproof electrical components, and precision-manufactured propellers that required industrial capabilities far beyond German wartime capacity. American amphibious vehicle production had been supported by a supply chain that included 847 specialized component suppliers across 23 states. The logistics network required coordination between automotive manufacturers, marine equipment producers, and military specification contractors that demonstrated American industrial integration. Spare parts production maintained inventory levels that allowed for sustained operations without supply interruptions, while German forces struggled with basic maintenance for conventional vehicles. The transportation system that delivered amphibious jeeps to European theater included specialized shipping procedures that protected marine components during Atlantic crossing, arriving in operational condition for immediate deployment. The innovation pipeline supporting amphibious vehicle development included continuous improvement based on combat feedback and changing tactical requirements. American engineers incorporated lessons learned from Pacific Theater amphibious operations, Mediterranean crossing operations, and European river crossing experiences into ongoing production modifications. Research and development programs at Ford's engineering facilities tested improved propulsion systems, enhanced waterproofing techniques, and increased payload capabilities that kept American amphibious vehicles ahead of any potential German countermeasures. The development process included university partnerships with institutions like MIT and the University of Michigan that provided advanced engineering support for complex technical challenges. Resource abundance supporting American amphibious operations contrasted sharply with German material shortages that prevented development of comparable capabilities. American production consumed aluminum, steel, and specialized alloys at rates that demonstrated industrial capacity far exceeding German capabilities, even before strategic bombing had degraded German production. The energy consumption for amphibious vehicle production represented a fraction of total American industrial capacity, while comparable production would have required resources that Germany could not spare, from basic military production. Transportation networks delivered raw materials, components, and finished vehicles with efficiency that German logistics systems, under constant air attack, could no longer achieve. The immediate tactical changes resulting from American amphibious capabilities forced German commanders to completely reconsider defensive doctrine for water obstacles. Traditional defensive planning that concentrated forces at likely crossing points became ineffective when American units could cross at any point along extensive river frontages. German artillery targeting procedures that relied on predictable concentration points and extended exposure times could not engage amphibious vehicles that crossed quickly and dispersed immediately. Wehrmacht units found themselves defending against multiple simultaneous crossings that overwhelmed their ability to coordinate effective responses, leading to defensive collapse along entire river lines. Enemy doctrinal adaptations to counter amphibious operations proved impossible given German resource limitations and tactical constraints. German engineers attempted to develop obstacles that would prevent amphibious vehicle operations, but lacked the materials and time necessary for extensive riverbank fortification. Attempts to concentrate mobile reserves for rapid response to amphibious crossings failed because German forces lacked the fuel and vehicles necessary for effective tactical mobility. The Luftwaffe could not provide the air support against amphibious operations because remaining German aircraft were committed to defending against strategic bombing campaigns targeting German industrial centers. The cascading effects of American amphibious capabilities extended far beyond river crossing operations to transform broader tactical and strategic planning. American commanders could now plan operations that assumed water obstacles would not significantly delay advanced schedules, allowing for more aggressive operational timelines. The ability to establish communications and reconnaissance across water barriers immediately upon encounter eliminated the intelligence gaps that had previously allowed German forces time to organize defensive responses. Logistics planning could assume that water obstacles would not create supply bottlenecks, enabling sustained operations in terrain that German doctrine considered naturally defensive. The strategic realignment forced by American amphibious capabilities accelerated the collapse of German defensive planning in Western Europe. Wehrmacht's strategy had relied on a series of river barriers to slow Allied advance and provide time for reorganization of defensive positions. The Rhine, Weser, and Elbe rivers had been central to German planning for defense of the Reich, but amphibious capabilities meant that these barriers could be breached immediately without the preparation time German commanders needed for effective defense. Resource allocation that had prioritized river barrier fortification became irrelevant when American forces could bypass fortified positions through immediate crossing operations. The impact on Allied coordination demonstrated how technological capabilities could enhance multinational military cooperation. American amphibious vehicles could support British and Canadian river crossing operations, providing reconnaissance and communication capabilities that enhanced overall Allied effectiveness. The sharing of amphibious technology and tactics with Allied forces multiplied the tactical impact beyond American units alone, creating coordinated threats that German forces could not counter effectively. Strategic planning could now assume that river barriers would not require extensive preparation time or resource concentration, allowing for more flexible and responsive operational design. The psychological warfare value of amphibious capabilities extended far beyond their immediate tactical impact to influence German morale and confidence throughout the Wehrmacht. German soldiers who witnessed American vehicles crossing rivers without engineering support experienced a profound sense of technological inferiority, that undermined confidence in German defensive capabilities. The apparent impossibility of the capability created doubt about German intelligence and technical assessments that had fundamental implications for military effectiveness. Propaganda attempts to minimize the significance of American amphibious operations failed because too many German personnel had witnessed the capabilities directly. Enemy attempts to counter the psychological effect of American amphibious operations proved ineffective because the capability was too visible and too tactically significant to dismiss. German commanders attempted to maintain morale by emphasizing other defensive advantages, but the psychological impact of vehicles that could ignore water obstacles was too profound to overcome with conventional leadership techniques. The broader German population, already demoralized by strategic bombing and military defeats, saw American amphibious capabilities as further evidence of technological superiority that made German victory impossible. The long-term confidence and capability perception changes resulting from exposure to American amphibious operations fundamentally altered German military effectiveness in the final months of the war. Wehrmacht units that had previously fought effectively in defensive positions began to question whether any defensive position could be effective against American technological capabilities. The psychological impact extended to German civilian leadership, who recognized that American industrial and technological superiority made continued resistance futile. Post-war interviews with German commanders consistently identified American amphibious capabilities as evidence of technological and industrial superiority that made German defeat inevitable. The immediate war impact of American amphibious capabilities proved decisive in accelerating the collapse of German resistance in Western Europe. The Rhine crossing operations that German commanders had expected to delay Allied advance for weeks were completed in days, with amphibious vehicles playing crucial roles in establishing bridgeheads and maintaining communications across water obstacles. Specific battles, including the crossings at Remagen, Oppenheim, and Wesel, demonstrated how amphibious capabilities could turn defensive advantages into tactical disasters for German forces. German acknowledgement of the significance came in post-war assessments that identified American amphibious operations as crucial factors in the rapid collapse of Wehrmacht resistance. Post-war recognition of American amphibious vehicle capabilities came from German commanders who had experienced their tactical impact directly. General Heinz Guderian, in post-war interviews, acknowledged that American amphibious capabilities had rendered traditional defensive doctrine obsolete and represented industrial capabilities that Germany could never have matched. Historical analysis by military institutions, including the U.S. Army War College, identified amphibious vehicles as examples of how American industrial innovation could create tactical advantages that were impossible for enemies to counter effectively. The technological legacy influenced post-war military vehicle development and established principles for amphibious operations that remained relevant for decades. March 24, 1945, 630 hours, Oberst Miller lowered his field glasses as American jeeps emerged from the Rhine like mechanical amphibians, water streaming from their sides as they accelerated up the German riverbank. What he had witnessed was not just a river crossing, but a demonstration of American industrial supremacy that could mass-produce the impossible and deploy it with casual efficiency. The 4 GPA amphibious Jeep represented everything that made American victory inevitable: technological innovation, manufacturing excellence, and the industrial capacity to turn revolutionary concepts into routine tactical reality. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories from World War II that reveal the technological and industrial superiority that secured Allied victory.